attending our presentation. My name is Jeremy Zimmerman. My presenter Melissa Ricos, and we are going to be talking today about surround sound, a new way to recruit, to find, recruit, and engage prospective students. I had to make sure I got that right. Okay, there we are. There are our names. We'll give our contact information out at the end if you have any questions or want to talk after the presentation. So we're going to be covering today, as was articulated in the session description, is we're going to look at a case, the case that has to do with the school that I'm employed at, and it'll touch on a number of different topics that I think provides, as the title implies, a comprehensive way of looking at marketing strategy when you're looking for new ways to grow your enrollment base, which is the situation that we found ourselves in at CBU. We're going to overview a campaign that we launched in the fall and look at some of the different characteristics and learning opportunities, and look more deeply at some of the tactics that were used that Melissa and her team were critical in providing to us. We'll look at the results to see if it was a success or not, and then we'll open up for questions and answers. And by no means do I think that we have all the answers. We make plenty of mistakes too. One of our mistakes that we made a few years back was kind of fun. Was we did a outdoor-based advertising campaign, and the call to action for the campaign was to tweet. It was called Tweet Your Purpose. And so there were these billboards in the general proximity of our campus, and the idea was that people would see the advertisement and they would get onto Twitter and they would tweet a little statement. Which in and of itself is an interesting idea, except that it didn't take into account the fact that people aren't going to pull off on the side of the road and open up Twitter and tweet something. And that's something else we're going to talk about today too, to think about how your target audience is going to respond to your campaigns. Take into account the behaviors they're going to have to go through and make sure that it works in reality. So we do make mistakes, but I think in this particular campaign we applied some intelligence and generated some interesting results that I hope you will also find interesting, and something that you can apply in your situations. So again, I work at California Baptist University. We are located in Riverside, California. If you're not familiar with where Riverside is, many people are not unless you live there. There's the map. So a little geography lesson for you. There'll be a test at the end, so make sure that you remember. But we're about 60 miles east of Los Angeles, situated centrally in Southern California. And we say we're about, and it's true, so it's not a lie, we're about 45 minutes from the beaches, from the mountain resorts, and from the desert resorts as well. So whether you want to go skiing, whether you want to go surfing, or you do that dirt biking thing, there's something at Seaview for you. And we have
in consideration the traffic when we get.
Okay. Let her in here. Security. Yeah, we do live, well, that's pretty much endemic to Southern California. There are a lot of people packed into a relatively small space. But I would say that Riverside, in this region that we call, it's a bit grandiose, I admit it, I didn't come up with it, other people did, call the Inland Empire, which comprises Riverside and San Bernardino counties. A demographic advantage because, with the exception of the early part of the housing bubble, it's a region of California that's been growing continuously for a couple decades now. And a lot of that because real estate, if you're aware of Southern California real estate prices, it's just unreasonable. So people move out to the suburban part of the Inland Empire, and so we have the advantage of all that population growth. Very ethnically diverse community as well, which creates opportunities and challenges for us, which I won't get into as much today. But I would say that our student body population is very much reflective of the demographics of the community that we do business in. All right, so we were founded in 1950, so we are 60 plus years young, looking pretty good for our age. We are accredited by lots and lots of organizations, like I'm sure all of your schools are as well. What's interesting is in 1994, the total student enrollment was about 808 students, if you want to be precise. That's when the current president came on board. And he began by looking back at the organization's original mission. And with that focus and with that commitment to fulfilling that mission, and doing a lot of things like adding new programs and new facilities, taking a lot of risks. We've enjoyed the growth that you see up to this last year, 8,000 students, and we're looking probably close to 8,400 students in the coming fall. We just graduated 1,200 students, so it's kind of fun that we're now graduating more people out every year than we had students. We have a huge menu of academic programs, which it's a blessing, and from a marketing perspective and from a recruiting perspective, it can be a curse at times as well. From engineering to nursing, education, of course all the business and marketing, psychology, anthropology, all those kinds of programs. So we have 150 undergraduate majors, minors, and concentrations, and 40 graduate majors and credentials. We just launched our first 2 doctoral programs this year as well, in nursing and in public administration. So adding those new programs and seeing where the market is moving, nursing was a big one. In fact, it was a program that our community had been asking us to launch for a number of years, and we held off because it's an expensive program to have, but then when the California legislature passed a law so that it required a increased number of nurses to patients, it immediately overnight created demand that we were able to capitalize on. So being sensitive to changes that are taking place in the macroeconomic environment is something that we have to do from a marketing perspective. And that's just a fun shot I thought I'd throw in there, a silly little kid that we photographed in one of our photo sessions. We compete with a whole number of schools. Does anyone find their school on that screen? They're all great schools. You, and yet what school would that be? APU, excellent, okay. So we're neighbors. Yeah, security, no, we actually looked at you guys. Usually what I hear is, well, what is APU doing? So you guys have done an excellent job, and so we maintain a friendly, competitive relationship with all these different schools, many of which are right within the Christian higher education subsegment of the larger marketplace. Some are just geographic competitors in that they do business in our area. And when I came on board to CBU in 2005, we had just undergone a graphic overhaul, a new logo, new literature, new website. So it was like a new suit. But what it lacked was an explicit articulation of what made us different. So you can only achieve the same results as your competitors if you look and talk just like they do. You can't be extraordinary if you look and talk like your competitors. And for us, it made sense for a number of years to do that, because we had a lot of catching up to do. Really, if you look at the growth of CBU, we really started interacting with the marketplace in a meaningful sense in 1994. So we're about 20 years old. And so it made sense early on to try to look and talk like our competitors so that people would see that, oh, we're credible alternatives to schools like APU and the others up on the screen. But at some point you have to break out from the pack if you're going to achieve, like I said, extraordinary results, which is what we realized we needed to do, which led to, again, this just kind of illustrates the idea that differentiation, being different, is just about finding out what is that point of difference and then clearly and repetitively articulating it. And that's where our tagline, Live Your Purpose, came from. Because we believe that each of our students, each person has been created for a purpose, and that the goal of the CBU educational experience is to help students discover and live that purpose, equip them spiritually, socially, intellectually, hopefully physically as well, to engage and to fulfill, to live out that purpose. So it's action-oriented, and all of our, I know APU, all of our competitors are doing very similar things. For us, that's something that we wanted to make explicit that differentiated us from the other alternatives around. So we propagate that message first and foremost at home. Good marketing, effective marketing begins at home. There was... So that phone. Yeah, this, oh, that one, okay, that's really embarrassing. Someone's phone's good. We'll let that one go. It's okay, Superman. You saved us from distraction. There was a project, a marketing research project that was done that just concluded, I believe in 2014, called Marketing 2020. You can look it up yourself, but it was a coordinated effort of a number of large global advertising agencies and global 100 firms, and they wanted to study the characteristics that made overperforming companies, overperforming the basis of their financial returns, share price, profits, compared to underperformers. And one of the things they found out that characterized overperformers is that their marketing efforts began within their own organizations. It wasn't exclusively looking out into the marketplace, see what advertising campaign, what clever slogan can we coin and advertise that will make new customers want to do business with us. They realize that effective marketing begins with your employees, it begins with your current customers, and then it radiates out from there because, of course, the best marketing is a satisfied customer. We also have our students clothed in clothing that bears, of course, they have to, we give them these, they buy these shirts. Yeah, but it's woven into the fabric of our culture. We, again, inaugurated that concept in 2007, and now it's something that we hear at employees, students. It's become kind of the undercurrent of the CBU culture. And so up to this day, so we refresh the message each year. This is a campaign that we launched in the fall in the Inland Empire area, so in our region, that again extends the idea, refreshes it, so we have to keep saying linear purpose over and over and over, although we do hit that drum. Because just about the time that you're tired of hearing it, it's just that at that point the market's beginning to get it. And it's beginning to sink into their memory and then start thinking, oh, that's what it's about. It's like, just do it. Hopefully it'll be just like, just do it someday. That's our aspiration. But we want to continue the growth that we've enjoyed. We realize that if we continue to focus entirely on our region, and we have students coming in from all over the world, but I would say probably 85% of our students come within a 60-mile radius. And that's probably true for a lot of the schools. Most students tend to stay fairly close to home when they were thinking about college, especially the kinds of students we attract. But we knew that if we were going to continue our growth, the ambitious growth goals that we set for ourselves, we have to diversify our focus. So we began looking at other regions within a reasonable distance of our campus to see, okay, what other places have the characteristics, the economic growth and stability, the kind of educational profile that we're looking for in our students. And that's something that this year we've made a lot of progress on, as well as finding out, well, who are our current students? What kinds of lifestyles do they have? So that we can go out and find more people like them, because the presupposition is that our future students are going to look and talk and live a lot like our current students. So we can make that assumption and look out here, where are those people living? And so we looked at Phoenix, Arizona as being one of those places that had a good overlap for the kinds of students that we were looking for, that tended to understand and appreciate the value of the offering that we delivered to the market. And so we looked at Phoenix, a large population center. It's been economically thriving for the past 5-6 years, even early in the housing bubble where many of the other places we looked at were still struggling. And we also looked at Phoenix and Arizona generally because there's a lot less competition there. There are a number of state schools, but there really aren't a lot of strong faith-based alternatives in the Phoenix area and Arizona generally, none that are really well known. So it made sense for us to look there. There is one particular competitor that has been coming on strong over the past, well, in terms of their geographic, their local area efforts over the past few years that we took into account. Okay, maybe I'll get to that in just a second. That's one of those competitors that we had to take into account. But what we needed to do before we launched any kind of campaign was to establish a benchmark. You have to know and be able to report on progress that your efforts have created, because corporate executives tend to look at advertising, the marketing effort generally, as an expense, when they should look at it as an investment. But if we don't report back the successes, how we've moved the needle in a measurable way, then they're left with that erroneous presupposition that it's just money, it's like a necessary evil. It's the cliche that just drives me up the wall, that 50% of my advertising works, I just don't know which 50% it is. But if you're intelligent, it's a lot more than 50%. So we did at the very beginning, but before we launched the campaign, was we surveyed the population. You can see some of the details there. 75,000 homes, 50,000 parents, 25,000 16 and 17-year-olds, to get an idea of their media preferences, their college intention plans. Were they going to go to college? Were they going to go in-state versus out-of-state? And which schools in California were they aware of? We gave them both an aided list, so they gave them a number of different California school names, and we included a number of names that we don't really compete with, but we just wanted to see if it was a good sample. Like we put USC in there. If we got responses back that no one knows who USC or Stanford are, we know this is kind of a strange group. We need to pull someone else. but we found that all of them knew, many of them knew who USC and Stanford were, and we put up another other of our near competitors as well as ourselves. And we did it through third-party groups so our involvement wouldn't be clear and it wouldn't bias the results. And so we were able to establish a level of awareness before the campaign started. We can go back at the end of the campaign and see, were we able to make progress? And I'll show you those results at the tail end of the presentation, so you have to stay to the end. A competitor that we have been increasingly aware of, because they've been very aggressive everywhere, but especially in our region in Southern California, has been through their $60 million yearly marketing budget, $2 million of which are spent just in advertising in the Phoenix area alone, just in TV, have been hammering on this drum for a number of years now, the idea of a private Christian education. So we thought, well, rather than trying to come in and establish and educate this new market that doesn't know us, evidently from the results of our survey, doesn't know us at all, do you want to come in and try to teach them what living purpose means, or should we find a different angle that takes advantage of what's already going on? So we did that. We came up with our campaign, which was an affordable Christian college, not in the tumbleweeds, but in California. And so we brought in Southern California themes, and we used a variety of tactics that I'll talk to you about in just a moment. But again, that messaging and surveying the marketplace to see what is the market already being exposed to, and so how can we take advantage of that and position ourselves in a relevant but different kind of a way that adds value, that makes it clear that, oh, it's like presidential politics. Everyone says the same thing, and it's like, how are any of these people different? They're all promising the same stuff. Someone has to differentiate themselves, and this is how we differentiate ourselves. And you're seeing here examples of an outdoor ad, an email, of course the map of the Phoenix area, and an online banner ad. So the media plan included both broadcast and what I call narrowcast tactics. So we had a television campaign that ran on cable as well as satellite, gave us about 6 million impressions or so over the course of the 3.5-month-long campaign. We had outdoor advertising that I had mentioned, a couple different static boards, as well as rotation through a network of digital boards. We had Pandora Radio, which is a great way to get conversions to your website. We'll talk about that in just a little bit too. A lot of times people, as you may have done yourself at some point, accidentally click on banner ads. They come to your website and you realize, oh, I didn't mean to click on that ad. And you get a bounce on your web statistics that shows that, oh, they got there and didn't really find what they were looking for, and muddles things up. We also did Google pay-per-click as well to reach out to that specific area. We also implemented a number of targeted tactics that I'd like Melissa to come up and talk to you about, because Carnegie's special. They do a lot of different things. We've worked with Carnegie for years. We advertise in their magazines, but we've also been longtime customers with them on the digital advertising side, and they've been played a critical role in helping us make contemporary our online and digital strategies. So with that,
okay. Any of you guys do online advertising right now? Anybody participating in kind of that digital world? So what we're really talking about here is how do you layer in another channel of how you're reaching students. So, you know, obviously television, outdoor, those have been around a while, and a lot of colleges and universities are very comfortable with those tactics because they've been around so long, right? But the minute you try and broach the conversation with, okay, how are we going to get online and where do we start? One of the things that's really unique that's happened in the marketplace just over the last couple of years is the ability to be so hyper-targeted in terms of who your audience is that you're trying to speak to. So gone are the days of sort of that, you know, just shotgun approach online where you would just buy millions and millions and millions of impressions and try and get them as cheap as possible and then sit back and just sort of wait for the students to come. We don't have to do that anymore. We can be very, very finite, as Jeremy mentioned, in terms of how we talk to these students and how we leverage technology to work smarter as we talk to them. So one of the things that Jeremy mentioned was doing paid search. Anybody doing paid search? Okay, great. So search engine marketing really has two components. So when you hear people talk about SEM, it's really two pieces to the puzzle. There's search engine optimization, which is the organic search results, the ones that come up for free. And then there's paid search, pay-per-click, Google AdWords, and those are the paid ads that you're paying for. And the nice thing about the paid ads is they can very often buy you some presence when the organic is not getting you there yet. Because if the student is actually searching for a particular program and they're looking for something like that and you're not coming up on page 1 or 2, as far as the student is concerned, Google knows all, so that means you don't have it, right? So, you know, it's really critical that you find that presence. And if you haven't done this, if you haven't exercised the behaving as a student, I seriously encourage you to do so. Go online, go to the Google search bar, and put in your programs that you're trying to promote. Typically, the way a student will begin their search is with the program or sort of job that they're kind of looking, if they don't really know what the program's called, with a geographic modifier after it. That typically is how a student begins their search. So try that, see where you come up. As Jeremy was mentioning, it's a great benchmark to know, okay, where is the issue? Where are we right now? Where do we stand right now? And then how do we move the needle? Because then if you start to implement certain tactics, there are things inside your analytics that you can begin measuring to find out, are students now coming on those keywords, based on those keywords that we're now implementing some work on. So what it looks like is basically, you know, when you look at your search engine results page, that's a paid ad, and that's an organic ad, okay? In an ideal, perfect world, it's great to have both. Because what will happen is the student will most likely click on the free ad, on the organic search result. They're more likely to click on that. However, the real estate in both locations is fantastic. And when we talk about mobile in a minute, it becomes even more critical when you get to mobile. The screens are smaller, results lists are shorter. So any type of presence like that that you can get is great. The impression up above is free unless somebody clicks on it. So getting that presence on your brand, tying your brand to specific programs you might be looking to promote. This is really critical when a student is actually actively seeking out a program or your college or university. So this is just one of the multi-channel layers that you want to have. Retargeting. This is a great cartoon. I posted our couch on Craigslist, and now Facebook is trying to sell it to me. Do you guys all know what retargeting is? Anybody doing it? Well, not you.
Sorry. Reflex.
So retargeting is something we kind of refer to it as the workhorse of a marketing campaign, okay? And the reason that we say that is every penny you spend on marketing and advertising, every internal resource moment spent on designing emails, on phone calls to students, whatever you're doing is trying to get them to do what? What are you trying to get them to do first? Go to your website, right? I highly doubt anyone has ever applied to your institution without going to your website first, right? So that is your first touch very often that a student might have directly with you. So once a student or a parent of a student arrives at your website, retargeting allows you to continue to carry on some type of conversation with that individual even after they leave your website. And the way that's accomplished is you place a little small piece of code on your website, and when the student or parent arrives on particular pages that you're looking to target that audience for, a small piece of code then drops a cookie into their browser, and that cookie then follows them around. It now sits in the browser, so anywhere they go online, you can deliver targeted messages to that individual on their different devices, wherever they go. So now do you all know what it is? Because it's all happened to you. Ladies, Zappos shoes is a huge retargeter. If any of you ever really, really love Disney characters, go and begin a Disney vacation. Tinkerbell, Goofy, they will all follow you everywhere you go. The key with higher ed, though, is we're not selling shoes, right? So we're not trying to beat somebody into the submission of showing them the pair of shoes on the ad and saying, you need to go buy these shoes now that you had decided to leave in your cart and didn't finish purchasing. But that's how the technology was originally designed. With higher education, obviously, it's a much bigger decision. So the goal is awareness. The goal is to grow that awareness, to get that saturation within the markets that you're looking to do, and to be able to deliver appropriate calls to action to that individual. So even though that student may not have gone and filled out an inquiry form, because we all know they're non-compliant prospects now, and they don't always do what we want them to do, and they don't follow the linear path that we would like them all to take, that puts them into our comm flow and gets us actually able to tell them what we want them to know, what we can actually do is, because they went to certain pages on your website, we know something about them, right? If it's fall and a student clicks on your how to apply page, chances are they're a senior or a stakeholder of a senior, right? So we can know that about that student, and then we can target specific ads to that individual based on where they've been on your website. Okay, so it's a great opportunity to deliver ads that promote things like events on campus, such as open houses. We see schools bucket a separate audience if you have an accepted students page, where it will actually allow us to change up the ads that are going to accepted students, because it's a little different messaging once they've been accepted, right? We're talking about an emotional decision. You're no longer telling a student, here's who we are, here's what we have to offer, here's our brand. You're now telling a student, this is why you belong here, and this is why this is the right choice for you. So the messaging changes up a little bit. So retargeting really picks up where all of your other efforts leave off, right? So you drive them there, tag them, continue the conversation in a way that you might not be able to do. You might not even have known the student was there. So it's a great solution for dealing with stealth inquiries that are happening. Mobile. So mobile is something that I think schools are a little bit behind in terms of the realization of just how much of an impact that has had on our audiences, the students that we're trying to speak to. Just 5 years ago, the percentage of students that were sitting on smartphones, had smartphones in their hand, was something that I think kept mobile a little bit off the radar with higher ed, whereas other industries were adapting mobile tactics really quickly. But what's happened now with mobile is it has to be a consideration in everything you do. We started to see dips in email open rates starting 5-6 years ago. Most of you probably, there was a whole lot of controversy about is mobile dead or is email dead? Should we still be sending emails to students? And we started to see a little bit of a decline in open rates. However, now we're starting to see the resurgence of email and open rates on email. And the reason is that students now have email in real time. Right? The applications that are available to them now have made it where not only can I open and check my email just as quickly as I can check text messages, but I can now have multiple email accounts that I can check all at once. I can flip back and forth between my multiple accounts. So if I am setting up a specific account for my college search process, which we all know a lot of students do, I can toggle and I can check on those emails just as easily as I can check on a text message. So we're seeing a resurgence of that. So when you're designing your email campaigns or you're reaching out to a student with a call to action that you want them to do, how many of you have actually walked through the entire process that you're asking a student to do? Yeah, we don't do it, right? So we sit in our offices and we say, oh, this email sounds fantastic. Let's deploy this email to this group of students, whether it's search or it's your inquiry list or whoever that designated audience is. But do you take out your cell phone, send it to yourself, take out your cell phone and walk entirely through the experience? You have to do this. You have to do this because there's a very good chance that this is your first engagement with that student. And it's great that you're hitting them in another channel on their cell phone. That's fantastic. But if it's a negative experience, you've just blown an opportunity with that student. Because the chances that they are going to click on your email, have a negative experience, and then say, oh, I'll go back and I'll look at that again on my laptop when I get home. Okay? Chances are they're not going to do that. They're just going to be like, oh, well, this school doesn't know what they're doing. Right? So walk through it. Make sure that whatever the call to action is that you're asking a student to do, make sure they can actually do it. I can't tell you how many times we do this exercise with the school and we find out the drop-down selection doesn't work on a mobile device, or we find out that the field's cut off and we can't actually type into them, or and sometimes those are just limitations that you all have. It may be that your form is dumping right into your CRM and it's not mobile compatible. It can be a whole host of other issues. But what you want to do is design a mobile campaign that's going to be a positive mobile experience. So you may need to change what the call to action is if the ad appears on mobile, for example. If the ad appears on mobile and you don't have a registration form for open houses that works on mobile, maybe you shouldn't run an open house ad on a mobile device that if they click through, asks them to register, and then they can't, right? So go home and walk through this exercise. Take your emails, look at what the links are. Click on all the links in your emails. See what you're asking them to do and see how positive that is. Also look at your emails on a mobile device. If you're sending really, really text-heavy emails, this is how students are opening their emails now. So if it's a really text heavy and you're burying you're kind of burying your really important line at the bottom, chances are they're not going to get there, right? So think about maybe more emails, but less to say in each one, right? Use the opportunity to have more touches with that student, but say less so that they can actually read what you want them to see without getting frustrated because they just open it up, they see it's a long email, and they're done, right? So always put mobile into your consideration of every type of communication you're doing with them. With regard to advertising, we design mobile-specific ads. They look different on a small device. With SEM, fewer search engine results page on a mobile device, fewer paid search ads on a mobile device, right? So you have to design a campaign just a little bit different when you're working on mobile. So one of the most hyper-targeted ways that you can get in front of your prospects and their families online is something called IP targeting. So what IP targeting allows you to do is take a list of names. So this could be a search by list, sort of insert list here. Could be a search by list, could be an accepted student list, could be an applied student list, could be a segment of that. You can then take that list and you can slice and dice that list whatever way makes sense for you. And then we can use the street addresses to actually marry up IP addresses of that household with the street address. Okay, I'm about to raise the creep factor for everybody here, okay? So then what you can do is you can deliver online display ads direct into that home over the IP address based on the information that you know about that student, okay? So if you know that student, if you take your big, for example, search by list, if you take that list and you know that student achieved over a certain level on the PSAT score, maybe you want to deliver that student honors college messages into that home. If you know that student is interested in business, or you know that student is interested in arts and humanities, or you know that student's interested in communications, you can slice and dice that list and not only deliver brand messaging into home, but deliver program-specific or academic-specific information that will be unique to that student's interests. And because it rides in on the IP address, it hits the entire household. Okay, so for those of you that are always challenged with how do we get our brand in front of parents, how do we make sure that parents are aware of who we are and where we are, this is a great strategy for being able to do that. It's also a great way to sort of prime the pump, if you will, with brand before you begin your more resource-intensive strategies. So if you know you're going to begin a comm flow of e-communication, you know you're going to be mailing expensive print pieces into a home, things like that, this is a great way to get your brand in the household ahead of the curve of where you're going to drop all that information and really kind of get that frequency of message going inside the home. So it's another way to really focus the message very succinctly and in a very, very smart and tailored way where you're not having much waste at all of impressions because you know something about that household that you're sending that ad into. IP targeting can also be used for transfer students, for example. You can actually IP target on community colleges through their IP addresses, okay? You can IP target into businesses if you're trying to promote graduate programs or adult continuing ed programs, things like that. So it's another way to just be highly, highly pinpointed and targeted in your efforts. I'm gonna turn it back over to Jeremy. He's gonna talk about some of the really great results that they saw with a surround strategy.
Thank you. Now I have this, now I can work the crowd.
It was there all along.
I know, but I'm not used to that, so how does this make a contraption? The email point that you brought up, I used to subscribe to that philosophy that email was dying because we saw it in our campaigns, our open rates were declining. Those emails that were being sent to high school students. And the conventional wisdom was, yeah, well, now they're using text and using social media, so email's falling by the wayside. But what we found in the email component of our campaign was it was IP targeted, so we were going into homes whose web browsing behavior indicated that they were searching for college based on the websites that they were visiting. So that's kind of scary. We know what things you're looking for on your computers. So in terms, they were looking at college-oriented websites, and so we sent emails into those homes, and as I looked at web traffic over the course of the campaign, there were two major spikes, and those two spikes coincided with the delivery of those two email messages. We sent out one in 1 month, one in another, and then we sent a follow-up email after each of those to those recipients who had not opened the first send to try to squeeze a little more conversion out of those efforts. So yeah, we had a very good experience with that. And our display ads, which were sent again, that were targeted those IP addresses, converted about twice the industry rate. So having that targeting enhancement increases the engagement, and it did for us. So results. You probably don't care about these, do you? You don't want to know. Just the philosophy is interesting. Well, we looked at a number of different outcomes, and these first two are more intermediate. Of course, the ultimate outcome is having a student enroll. But sometimes we can never wait. If you were to wait until the fall to see, was that campaign I did a year ago successful, you'd wait too long. You'd be the frog in the kettle, and you'd find out, oh wait, I've been cooked. So we have to look at upstream metrics to see, is this campaign working, so I can make course corrections while the campaign is in the midst of being implemented. So one of the things we look at, which I'm sure you all do as well, is look at your web traffic. And so we looked at a web traffic for visitors coming in from Arizona, and this is a screen capture from Google Analytics, which is free, so all of you can do that. And we could see that over the course of the campaign period, our web traffic increased. Well, this is the number of sessions, so visits, total new and returning visitors, increased by 90%, 63%, 64% increase in new sessions, or essentially with Google's ever-changing terminology, essentially new users, 212% increase in new users. Our bounce rate also increased, which is not a good thing. You don't want that to happen, but that's something that you have to be willing to accept when you expand your prospecting efforts. You're going to get more people coming, kicking tires, and walking off the lot. That's just the cost of doing business. So we could see there, we looked at web traffic throughout the course of the campaign just to make sure that it was netting some return, at least at this level. I mentioned the survey that we did at the beginning of the campaign. We deployed it again about a month after the campaign was concluded to see how we moved the needle. We looked at a number of different factors, but the one that was, to me, the most gratifying was awareness. So we provided them with a list, again, as I mentioned earlier, of schools in California. It was not every school, but a number of schools. And of course, ourselves included, we found that both for parents, the green line, and students, the purple line, that awareness had increased dramatically in both of those groups. It helped that we started with a very low awareness, so there's a lot of room for improvement. But that notwithstanding, we definitely saw an improvement in awareness of our school's existence, so that's a good place to start. And then lastly, and for the purposes of our different job responsibilities, most importantly, are the enrollment activities. So we haven't reached the end of the recruiting year yet, but what we're seeing year to date, if we look at the last 2 years, from March to 2013 up to 2015, our inquiries have more than, well, just about doubled from last year. And then the only different thing that we're doing between last year and this year was this campaign, both on the marketing and the advertising side, and also on the admissions activity side. This next chart I did not put a title on, but that shows, this last one was inquiries, this one is applications. We're seeing a similar kind of a trend forming, dramatic increase. In fact, at the very beginning of the campaign, I got a note from the president saying, what are the goals for this campaign? And one of the goals was to double our enrollment. And so that's a great thing to have, a measurable goal. And so yeah, I'm sweating a little bit, if you notice that. So, we're definitely going to meet and exceed that goal. But to set measurable goals, in fact, this last slide is some of the things that we can learn from some things that we've learned and that we've taken away from this experience. One, as I mentioned earlier, marketing starts with mission. So if you are not clear about your organization's mission, and if your organization itself is not clear about why they exist, what is their purpose, so to speak, collectively, then your marketing will be weak. But if your mission inspires your marketing, if it inspires your messaging, and really it's the foundation for your brand position in the marketplace, then you've got a great foundation to build on. And if you look at some of the most successful companies, we were talking about Southwest last night, how they thrived even after 9/11 when a lot of the larger carriers went bankrupt. And a lot of it goes back to a strong sense of mission. It kept them focused, it kept them on track, and it can do the same thing for our marketing efforts. It helps us to know what to say no to and what to say yes to. And we must differentiate or die. Because again, if we're just running with the pack, then we're susceptible to the same macro and microeconomic forces that the rest of the herd is susceptible to. You want to break out and establish points of difference. Establish goals and benchmarks so that you know if you've succeeded. And I'm guilty of this as well in my career of launching campaigns without having a clear idea of what success looks like before I got started. And so it's very difficult to know if you ever got there. And so when someone comes into your office and asks you, how did that campaign go? Was it successful? You need to have an answer. In fact, if you wait until your president comes to you and asks you, was that campaign successful? It's probably too late, because the seed of doubt has already been planted in his mind or her mind, and they're wondering, is it real? Am I getting value for the money that we're allocating to this part of the organization? So be proactive. Set those benchmarks, measure against them, proactively report those results, take advantage of target tactics that Melissa explained so that we can get even more precise, so that you don't necessarily have to carpet bomb entire sections of the country, but you can surgically attack very specific places and go into homes, onto phones of people that are already expressing interest in what it is that you have to offer, what it is that we have to offer. And then lastly, monitor web traffic early and often so that you can see the effects of your campaigns well in advance of the final verdict, which of course is the enrollment numbers that come in the fall. Any other lesson that you'd like them to learn from these?
Yeah, I want to stress the monitoring website traffic. I cannot tell you how often I will sit in an admissions office and they'll say, our applications are down 20% this year and we didn't see it coming. Well, if you go back and you look at your website traffic, chances are the headlights were there, right? So do most of you get into your analytics at all? Do you guys even have, sometimes people don't have access. And it can be a little daunting. It can be, if you get in there, you can get lost really quickly. It can kind of become the rabbit hole. I highly recommend if you don't, if you feel intimidated or you feel uncomfortable with analytics, go on YouTube. Google has lots of little videos that you can watch that are 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and just learn the real high level stuff that you can look at. As Jeremy was mentioning, like the visitor traffic, new user traffic, how to look year over year, how to adjust the big picture stuff. And then you can take those videos and just pick up some highlights so that you get a little bit more comfortable getting in there. If you start to go off into the maze of analytics, it can be, like I said, a little overwhelming, but just bite off a little bit at a time so that you are going in there. It doesn't take long to do, but it's a great barometer to what's going on. And you can get more complicated as it goes on. There are ways to set up goals in there that have to do with your campaigns. There's ways to track traffic that comes directly from campaigns. But even just having the really simple, basic ability to go in there and look at what's going on with traffic is going to help you know if you're making some headway. Because chances are you're not going to have more inquiries and more applications next year if your traffic isn't up this year. So it definitely is a barometer to be keeping an eye on. So I can't stress that enough. It's a really important one.
How many of you in your departments manage your company's or your university's website? Okay, so a small minority of you. So mostly it's another department on campus that manages the site. Most likely they must have some sort of analytics package. Most use Google Analytics because it's free. But whatever the analytics package is, more than likely they can create a user account for you or someone on your team so you can log into the analytics system and look at those numbers for yourself. More than likely, you're always creating landing pages, unique URLs for your campaigns so that you can isolate traffic or activity related to that campaign generated from all the other things that you're doing. And so that you can go back and look at that particular page and see what kind of traffic has been coming there. Has any traffic been getting there? Or has there been a huge surge of activity? Whatever it might be, but find out which department you already know who manages your site. Connect with them, ask them to create a user account for you so that you can get in. If you need to educate yourself, maybe that department can help you get up the learning curve more quickly, learning how to navigate through the information. There is, as Melissa said, there is you'll be swimming quickly in an ocean of data. So it's important to know what you want to focus in on, and usually the basic measurements of activity are the things you want to spend your time looking at. We go till 12:30, right? No, that's it. We planned to bring it to a conclusion now, but if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. as best we can.
And we're also happy to send you all a copy of the presentation. So if any of you want a copy of the presentation, just leave your business card behind and we can send it off to you too. Any questions? Yes.
What was the reason you selected Phoenix as a target market?
Well, a number of things. The macroeconomic improvements. We did our situation analysis to survey different locations. You did Las Vegas as well. And this was done about 3 years ago. And Las Vegas was still struggling to recover from the housing bust. Phoenix had gotten a much more rapid start on gaining strength. So that was one thing. We looked at a report that one of the local area chambers of commerce had produced about higher education trends and the need for, they actually said in their report, a faith-based alternative in the Phoenix metropolitan area. So that gave us a clue there might be some demand for what we have to offer. We knew that there was a dearth of those offerings to begin with. We also saw demographically. One thing is interesting. We are California Baptist University. We don't necessarily focus on the Baptist marketplace, Baptist consumers. But we discovered that in Phoenix, 2% of the population identifies as Baptist or Southern Baptist, whereas in the Inland Empire, where we do business, it's about 0.5%. So we saw about a 4%, now a 200% increase relative to our own backyard, which again is a part of the marketplace that might be more likely to appreciate the kind of offering that we have to give to them. So those were some of the things. And again, the proximity was key too. We know that the student themselves, and well, the parent wants the student to stay probably relatively close, but the student, while they don't want to be, they don't want to move to New York necessarily to go to school and be that far from them, they don't want to be too close. So Phoenix for us was close, but not too close. It's a good balance of proximity.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Talking about the IP targeting, you made a statement of targeting peers and students through technology. Can you talk about that more?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can actually do, we call it rooftop targeting. So basically you can take the street address of a business, for example, or in this case an institution like a community college, and we're able to marry that up with the IP address, or in this particular case, community colleges tend to have a bank of IP addresses, and then we target the online advertising direct over those IP addresses. So when students are on the community college campus and they're hanging out for the day and they're taking their courses and they're online, they typically log into the community college's website or the community college's Wi-Fi. And so when they're on that Wi-Fi, that's where we're writing the ads in. So we're able to deliver ads directly into those community colleges, those feeder schools that you might be really looking to recruit from. And where we see tremendous success with that is with really strong calls to action. So if you have transfer days on campus, where you're trying to get those students to be aware that you're going to have some type of an event on campus where they can come, and sometimes schools have a transcript reading right on campus, or maybe just to meet with counselors and learn how easy it is to transfer. Driving traffic to those events through awareness that those events even occur, it's a fantastic way to do that. Really, really good. And it's really simple. It's, it's technology. We hear all the time schools say, our resources are so limited. We have, I wish we had more people in our marketing department. I wish we had a marketing department. But technology can really augment a lot of your internal resources. It really can. You can let the technology that's out there do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, so that you're no longer having to manually fire a next series of emails. There are systems out there to do that. There are companies that can help you with that. You no longer have to sit there and try and figure out exactly where do I put my ads. There's technology to do that for you, and it's actually much more cost effective than you sitting in a room with 10 people and saying, okay, we want to advertise on this site, this site, this site, and this site. There's some value to that if there's one particular site that's just really overwhelmingly valuable for you. But generally speaking, there are much more efficient ways to do things. And it's just a matter of finding who those resources are that can help you, because it's really amazing what one person can do with the right resources and technology being leveraged. It also provides you much better data back. As Jeremy mentioned, you can actually, when you use technology to do stuff, you're no longer, I tell this story all the time. There was a school in Oklahoma, not to pick on Oklahoma, but if you've ever driven across the entire state of Oklahoma, which
That's rough.
I really don't recommend it, but if you've ever done that, there's a school in Oklahoma City that I was doing that drive, and I'm a little bit more aware of advertisements that I see for colleges and universities because of my role, but I happened to notice a billboard ad for them. Caught my attention. I said, okay. I got about 2 or 3 miles down the road, and there was another one. So then I thought, so I started counting them. I went through 22 of them between where I noticed and when I got to the city where they were located. So one of the questions that I asked—
Was that APU?
one of the questions I asked the marketing director was, of those 22 billboards on a highway that goes through nothing, which one's the most effective? Right? Which one's really working best for you? Or could you remove every other one, right? Because there's no exits. It's like, you kind of, not a lot of exits in between some of those, right? So, could you remove every other one and put that money towards something that you could also— I'm not saying get rid of them, but take that money and reallocate it to some things that you could actually start to get some measurements and some metrics back on that would really help you with being able to tell the story, like Jeremy said. Being able to tell the story about what's really going on and was that campaign effective. And it was one of those things where their answer was, well, we've just always had those 22 billboards. Well, okay. There's lots of new strategies out there that you might want to look at, kind of reallocating a little bit. And a lot of times schools will say to us, well, where do we start? Where do we start? How do we dip our toe into digital? Because we're obviously not going to be able to go and get this brand new big budget that we don't already have that we can allocate to online marketing. So let's say, where do schools usually find the money to get started with something that's a little bit more targeted? And then what do you recommend getting started with? So as far as the money goes, very often just a reallocation of some of the funds that you already have in traditional. And again, I'm not saying not do traditional, but taking a really good look at what's giving you the measurements that you need, and looking at how you can potentially start to because it does give you results back. And once you have those results and that data, you can then go and make a case for why you need to do more, or why you need to allocate more money towards a new area you might be marketing in, things like that. As far as strategies go, probably retargeting on the digital side. It's probably the single biggest thing that you could do tomorrow for a relatively inexpensive budget, because that's your level of highest intent audience, is the ones that are already coming to your site. They've already found you, they already know something about you, and being able to get that message back out to them. And it produces fantastic data, and you can set up conversion metrics and things like that around it. So you can get some really great data back to go back and make a case for why you need to continue to sort of potentially get even more targeted with some of the things you're doing.
I would say in our experience, the retargeting tactic converts at a much higher rate than many of our other tactics. So we'll have, in fact, in this campaign I mentioned here, we created a single landing page for the whole campaign. And when a person would come to that page, we would look at the page that they came in from. What sent them to that page? Because you don't want to ask people, how'd you hear about us? Because they may know and they may just tell you. That's great. They may not know and they may make something up. And then all of a sudden you think that tactic that everyone's referring to is like, hey, this is what sent us here, is in fact not the tactic, and you start going off in that direction erroneously and wasting your money. So self-reporting is always fraught with that kind of potential for error. But we have tracking links that we build into all these different mechanisms. So in the ads the retargeting ads that we run, I can tell when a person fills out that form at that campaign landing page if they came in from a retargeting ad or from a Pandora ad or whatever is the source is. If I can track it, I can tell. And for this campaign and most other campaigns, most of the conversions we get, the forms that web visitors fill out, are coming in through retargeting, which makes it's kind of intuitive. This is a person who visited the campaign page at one point and didn't fill it out then. Maybe they heard the ad on Pandora, they went to the site, that's interesting, but then we put the code on their computer. Evil of us, I know, but that's okay. It's innocuous. It doesn't capture any personal information. It just says this is the computer that was expressed interest. So then they leave the site and they see an ad that relates back to that campaign. They go, oh yeah, I remember that. Where did I see that? They click on the ad, they come back in. Then they're ready to fill out the form and say, yeah, can you start a conversation? I'm ready to talk to you. And so retargeting works great. And also retargeting shows us what websites will come in from at a higher rate than others. So what we've done over the years, we look at our retargeting data and we say, okay, what sites are driving most traffic back to our website? Sometimes some of these sites you wouldn't expect to drive traffic back to your website. And so then we can say, well, now let's push more advertising to those sites. So now we're talking about display advertising back to sites that seem to have people that are more interested than others in what we have to offer. So there can be that synergistic effect between the retargeting advertising to your site visitors as well as display advertising to people who may never have visited your site but have similar interests to those people. Does that make sense? So there's an interesting little symbiosis there.
And then retargeting is also, we know that parents are a lot of the early shoppers, right? Parents are the ones that are potentially coming and vetting out a little bit of your institution before they put it on the short list with their student, right? So if you are using retargeting and it's mom or dad that happens to go to your admissions page, it's mom or dad, they're going to get retargeted. And when we look at those site lists, as you just mentioned, there's some of those that we're pretty certain are mom and dad. I don't know, kids could be buying a house, but probably not. But the retargeting ads show up where your interests are and where you go. So there's also that sort of, you're being where they are. Instead of you trying to figure out where they might go, you're going to go where they go. So we see ads on New York Times and Forbes magazine and, really highbrow CNN news sites, things like that. We're fairly certain those might be mom and dad. And then, education sites, which you always expect. YouTube is always one of the highest performers with retargeting because just from a volume perspective, they spend a lot of time there. So you're going wherever they are going, and that's, and in the case when it's a mom or a dad, that's really valuable as well.
Okay, I know we're probably close to or over our...
We're right on.
Right on. Okay, thank you all so much.